Okay, hello everybody. I'm going to do one more little update, like news update. This is roll time right before I posted September 5th, 2018. I saw a lot of my friends today and we could have had some good teachings and all. It was interesting because the little news video I did earlier today, I barely touched on a lot of issues that I think are important issues. It was strange because I do Google the news all day. It's my habit. And when I did a Google search, right after I spoke on that first video, without mentioning the name of that particular judge, his name is Bruce Ohr. And of course, I remembered the name in the past. I forgot it when I made the video. But I want to put briefly things in context. But my Google search actually had the name Bruce Ohr pop up. Now, I wasn't searching for the name. I was just doing my Google thing. And of course, it picks up your videos as well that I post on YouTube, which is Google. I found that interesting because even sometimes when I'm doing my videos, a friend of mine by the name of Crow, it's strange because when I make videos and I say Crow, then I post those videos to YouTube, and my Google search brings up the name Crow for various other things on Google, which is fine. I'm not speaking things that I'm hiding, but they're really involved. If I can make it, but being that came up, that's very interesting how it works. Today also you had another breaking story. The New York Times did something that they normally don't do. They allowed an anonymous source within the White House to write an op-ed, okay? And this anonymous source within the White House, meaning he works, and it says he's a senior level in the administration of Trump. And he wrote that people, along with the Bob Woodward book that came out, that people that are in the White House are actually taking, if you will, drastic measures. They hide things from Mr. Trump, like certain agreements he might make with South Korea or whatever, and they have to get them off the table. The narrative is, in this op-ed, that he is so erratic, and it also said that they've discussed the particular amendment, I forget which one it is, 25th, but that you might have to enact a forceful removal of a president because of mental instability. Okay, now supposedly this man also, or person that's working for Trump, is saying that's how everybody in Trump's administration, meaning including John Kelly, respected people that are at the top, chief of staff and all. He's saying that basically behind the scenes, they are all doing everything, realizing that Mr. Trump is so unstable and so erratic that in order to protect the country, they're doing like a behind the scenes, resistance. Why is this questionable to me? I'm a news watcher. Mr. Kelly himself has said at times that these things are fake. I don't think a man like John Kelly or other top people would be in a White House knowing we got to hide this paper from Mr. Trump because he is so erratic. We have to do all we can behind the scenes to prevent him from destroying the country. But at the same time, that these same people who would have such high noble standards would lie to you and me and go out in the media and say it's not true, which Mr. Kelly has said some of the accusations against him are not true, particularly pertaining to how behind the scenes they got to control Trump. Because people of high credibility like John Kelly would openly say, I resign. And then the other narrative would be, but they're staying behind the scenes working secretly to thwart Trump, and they're afraid to remove him through that amendment that says you can remove a president if he's so unstable, because they don't want to spark a constitutional crisis. But to be honest, they wouldn't be some of these people would not publicly be disowning if they were doing that, because some are people of integrity. But why is that interesting? Because there's a huge push for an impeachment, and then I believe because of the New York prosecutors that are looking at Trump and everything, they want to eventually get him out and then get him in prison. Now, a lot of people wanted that for a long time in the media. Mr. Joe Scarborough basically called for that on MSNBC. He said one day, we're going to put you and your family in jail. Mr. Scarborough says we want Ivanka, Trump Jr., and possibly the grandson. Maybe he will go to a juvenile detention center. Because the mainstream media is advocating for that. What's the real scandals, though? Why mention the name Bruce Ohr? I told you how it came up. What came out is Bruce Ohr had to testify before the congressional hearing. What came out was real treason, if you will. Some call this treason. Bruce Ohr was one of the judges working in the Justice Department with Mueller, with all these people. And they're supposed to be carrying out a serious investigation if Mr. Trump colluded with the Russians to thwart an American election. Okay? But Mr. Bruce Ohr, who played a pivotal role in all of this, his wife, Nellie Ohr, actually worked for a political machine called Fusion GPS, was getting paid to get dirt on Mr. Trump by Russians. It's hard to fathom the contradiction here. Bruce Ohr, his wife, was personally working for the firm called Fusion GPS, paying money. That firm was paying money to a man that was a non-citizen. His name is Michael Steele. He's a former British spy. So through working with a non-citizen, they paid money to obtain false information, or at least unverifiable information, through contacts with Russians. And both the Democratic Party as well as our government paid Mr. Steele. He was on the payroll of the FBI for a while. When it became known that Mr. Steele was leaking illegally information to the media, which others were doing, we now found out, in the Comey thing, the McCabe and all that, that's collusion. Do you understand that? That's Mr. Mueller, and that the team that's investigating Trump using information that was obtained as political opposition research, and not, we used to think they didn't reveal it to the Pfizer court, meaning they had to go get warrants to spy on Carter Page and all. They didn't even go before the court to make they did a lot of illegal activity. Now, mind you, I'll try and go short on this aspect here. Mr. Ohr, Bruce Ohr, was one of the judges in this whole cabal. And when he went before the Congressional Committee a week or so ago, it was revealed that Mr. Steele, the non-citizen, colluding with the Russians along with the Democratic Party, actually made statements that he does not want to see Mr. Trump elected. Now you have a British spy who is a non-citizen working with Mueller and Bruce Ohr and the Democrats and openly stating, we cannot see this man becoming president. And then if he does, we will do all we can to remove him. Andy's plan, things of that nature. This is treasonous and scandalous. And when Mr. Bruce Ohr went before these hearings the other week, he basically said everybody inside knew that they were doing this. Because what happened was when Michael Steele was fired as, quote, a source for the FBI because he was leaking. All this is already illegal collusion, if you will. He continued to work and feed political opposition research information to Bruce Ohr as a back channel to give that information to Mueller and his prosecutors. Now, his wife, Nellie Ohr, was being paid to collect this information from the Russians. And as the information, which a lot of it, they kind of faked stuff to get money. This happened in a couple other things, meaning the Russians tricked even the FBI at one point to pay a lot of money for something that they never had. That was another case. And so then his wife, Nellie Ohr, working for this political firm, Fusion GPS, paid by Hillary and Democrats, was continuing to release information secretly, illegally, to her husband because he's works for the government, Bruce Ohr. And that information continued to be passed along. All of that is illegal collusion with the Russians by not just the Democrats, but by the liberals, by his team and by his prosecutors, because they were taking this illegal contact with the Russians, and it was illegal also because Michael Steele was not registered as a lobbyist, and he was having these contacts, getting information from Russians, paying money in order to influence the election. And after the election they voted for Mr. Trump, then to remove him, to get an impeachment, to get the amendment that we got to remove him. And they are giving zero accountability for all of this. And the mainstream media should have reported some of what I told you, and they did not. Instead, they reported some language that somebody said, the Russians have a lot of dirt on Trump. That came with the whole cabal that I just described. So to be honest about it, the media has not told you the truth on that. The media has not told you the truth on that. And that's their mindset. Okay? That's an amazing thing. And yet the wheels are turning that we got to remove, something must be done, like in an emergency situation. And I listen to the news. And people that work for Trump and for his administration, when they were asked on various media outlets, is he really that unstable, that they honestly said, no. He does not do things in the normal political way. Obviously, he's an outsider in that sense. But they said, no, he's not a madman that we're going around behind the scenes. Now, the anonymous source that released it, as far as we know, it could be made up. Why? The media's got a high standard. They did that multiple times these last 6 months. They did that multiple times. I remember when Mr. Comey was going to testify before Congress, James Comey, who is in legal liability right now. Trump had said one time that James Comey told him on 3 separate occasions that Trump himself was not the target of the investigation initially. Everybody thought Trump was lying, including the media, including me, because it seemed like I kind of believed some of the false narrative. And then a mainstream news outlet, forget which one, broke a story, and it said an anonymous source confirmed that James Comey is going to testify before Congress. This was 8 months ago now, whatever. That he did not tell Mr. Trump 3 times that he himself was not a target or under the investigation initially. Now that media report that came out in mainstream media, mainstream news, had an anonymous source that they said was highly trustworthy, meaning multiple sources, this is fact. Then when Comey had the hearings, they asked him, did you indeed tell Mr. Trump on 3 occasions? And many of the Democrats thought Comey was going to say no. Trump's line. And to the shock of everybody, Comey said, yes, I did tell Mr. Trump on 3 occasions that he was not the target. So the media lied. They had a fake source, they had no source. Why did they do that? They thought they were right. And they thought by saying that ahead of time, it was going to cause Trump to maybe resign or do something drastic. And they just lied. They were never accountable for that. And so whenever you see, in this day, an anonymous source, whether it's for the Woodward book, whether it's for this breaking story that just came out 2 days ago, they have a track record of making that up. And I gave you that one example. They never explained how the mainstream media said our sources are confirming that Comey will say that he did not tell Trump that. They believe that. They leaked a fake thing with no source, or sources who lied on purpose. And to my surprise, Trump was telling the truth. I didn't think he would. The media also had me believing that Donald Trump Jr. his father, Mr. Trump, did have knowledge of the meeting in the Trump Tower. If he did or not, it's not a big thing. Because what they're looking for in that meeting at Trump Tower with the Russians is, did Mr. Trump have any contacts with the Russians to get dirt on Hillary? Which is exactly what the information Mr. Mueller is using. The information Mr. Ohr secretly is a back channel, profiting his wife working for the firm. They're using all of this illegal collusion. Mind you, I'm not talking about just the Democrats. We're talking about Mr. Mueller, Bruce Ohr, Nellie Ohr. All of these insiders are using all of this information obtained illegally. And they're giving no accountability for what they're doing. So hopefully this gives maybe a little bit more insight. These should have been the top stories in the news. And the way they manipulated you is, when all this came out in the last few weeks, all they grabbed hold of was a particular statement that Michael Steele said, we think Russia's got Trump under the barrel or whatever. At the same time, not showing you the real collusion going on, the real treason. Okay? We'll upload this now.